And there we go. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to invite you into a conversation with one of my clients, Jessi. And today we are going to just be pulling back the curtain and talking about our process. A lot of my case studies are focused on specific results that my clients got during our time together or just in general. And we certainly are going to celebrate all kinds of results that Jessi gets through her business. But we decided to come at this conversation a little bit differently because Jessi and I, first of all, Jessi invited me into working in her business to work on process, and we'll talk more about that later. And so that really was what joined us together. And I think that there's just so much richness that other people can hopefully take away from the conversation to help support their journeys. And Jessi has been so generous about agreeing to spend some time and talking through that with us today. But before we jump in, I want Jessi to be able to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about who she is and what she does in the world.
Sure. Thanks, Cassandra. I'm excited to be here and open the curtain and share, with everyone what our process was like working together. So I'm Jessi Bauer-Phipps. I'm founder and lead event planner of Joined by Purpose, where I focus on mission-driven event planning. I work with nonprofit organizations that are service-based, direct service-based. And I partner with them on primarily their fundraising events. So I call myself a logistics nerd. So I take care of all of the logistical aspects for the event so that the people within the organization can focus on those impactful relationships that they have. Because it's so important for a nonprofit to build relationships with their donors and with their sponsors and with their volunteers. And unfortunately, in the nonprofit world, you're wearing so many hats. It's so difficult to do that when you're dealing with all the details of planning the event. So while I take care of the registration and the contract with the venue and picking out the menus and all of those details that really are important for making an event successful, the organization can focus on the things that will make the fundraiser successful, that will bring in more money for the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for giving us that overview. And also, I just want to invite anybody who is joining us live right now to say hello in the chat. Let us know where you're maybe streaming in from. And feel free to drop us questions if we happen to see them while we're in the studio. We'll be sure to try to address them. Otherwise, we can come back and address those in the comments later. And then also, if you're catching this as a replay, feel free, please, to let us know that you caught the replay. And in the comments, say replay, because we want to see how this ripples out and what kind of conversations that it actually sparks, because that was the whole point of us coming together today. So like I said at the beginning, Jessi and I got connected to work, and we worked on process in her business, because that is one of the many ways that I work with my clients. And I think that what I was really excited about highlighting the relationship and the work that Jessi and I do is I think that sometimes there's a misconception about the work that I do, that I only work with big companies or people who have big teams or on really long-term, like year or longer projects. And that's simply not the case. Like, I do those things, but I also have other structures in which I support business owners. And I love being able to roll up my sleeves and work intimately the way that Jessi and I did. So first of all, I think that maybe paint the picture of what life in your business was like before, maybe even before we met, but some of the things that maybe were the catalyst to us working together. So tell us that kind of before snapshot.
Yeah, so I'm a solopreneur, and I enjoy being a solopreneur, but I'm one of those business owners who started a business having no desire to run a business. I just wanted to do what I do. I enjoy planning events, and wanted to continue to do that. But I quickly realized that, hey, in order to make a career out of this and make this business successful, I need to treat it like a business. And I had made big strides in that, but I had gotten to a point where I kind of plateaued with the efficiency of my business, and it felt like I was, spinning my wheels. And every time I needed to do something for a client, it's like it was similar to what I had done for a past client, but I had to reinvent the wheel because I had no systems and process in place for how I could make it more efficient. And some of that was with the client deliveries that I didn't have those process, but some of it was just within my own business operations, process for putting together proposals and sending invoices and timelines and all these things. That's like, I was just kind of making it up as I went along, and it was working. I mean, I was successful. I just came off of the best year I ever had. But as I want to, thank you, as I want to, continue with this and work with more organizations and help more nonprofits be successful with what they do, I realized that I really need to be more efficient in my own process. And I was just struggling with how to do that, how to go about that. And then Cassandra came along and we met. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and your experience is similar so much to so many other small business owners, like loving the craft of whatever it is that got them into their business in the first place. Because you're very good at your craft, you were able to build a really successful business, like you said, have the best year of your life, and then also go, this doesn't feel as good as I want it to, even though it's successful. And I want it to change. One of the things that I loved about when we got connected and started talking about working together is understanding like the vision of what you wanted to create. And what I think is fun about working with you versus some other folks that I've had the privilege of working with is that you don't have aspirations of like scaling and having this multi-million-dollar or billion-dollar industry. You don't want to have this giant team, whatever. But it's still very important to you that you have this really effective, efficient business because it's part of the ecosystem of your life. And so tell us a little bit about the details of what you were looking to like create in your world, in your life, why this business, I start to say why this business needs to support that. That sounds like kind of a straight like duh, Cassandra.
Right.
But yeah, talk to me a little bit about like, yes, what you were envisioning and are desiring to create and how this business fits into it.
Sure. Well, because of the nature of how I work with clients, I take on all aspects of their event planning. And so I can spend anywhere from 100 to 400 or 450 plus hours with each client. So because of the nature of that, I'm limited into how many clients I can take on in a year. Yes, I don't want to scale. I don't want to have a team. It's not like I'm looking to make Join by Purpose be, the national forerunner of event planning for nonprofits. That's just not who I am. I enjoy the one-to-one relationship. But I do want to be able to help more organizations because that's really what drives me is being able to help those nonprofits so that they can help the clients that they serve. And in order to be able to help more and work with more groups, I needed to be more efficient because the more time I spend reinventing the wheel, doing, the same things over and over again, and not having those processes in place, the more time I'm spending not helping the organizations. I mean, helping the one that I'm working with, but, if I can be more efficient, I can take on more. But also there's a limit of how much I want to take on because again, I like being the small shop. I didn't get into this because I wanted to make millions and work, 80-hour weeks. I do that enough during event weeks when I work the 80 hours. I don't want to do that all throughout the year. I have other things that, in my life that I want to be able to spend my time on. And when I'm working so hard at the things that could be easier and could be more efficient, I'm not doing those things I enjoy. I want to spend more time gardening and we've got aspirations of doing like a hobby farm but I can't spend time with animals if I don't have the time. I want to read more. That's something that I've always enjoyed doing, and I find I don't have the time for it. So those were really the two things that really inspired me to want to firm up my operations, is being able to work with some more organizations to be able to help more clients, and just have the free time for myself and be able to enjoy the free time knowing that the business is taken care of.
Yeah, you want your business to be a part of your life, not be your life.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that like there's so much out there targeting small business owners. I think especially like service provider business owners. Maybe it's not limited to service providers. It just tends to be who I work with. So that's who's in front of me. But like that in order to be a legitimate business owner, or to like, if you're doing business right, that you have to want to grow scale, right? And like people buy into that and feel badly or judge themselves against that like unnecessary standard. And what I really love about you is that you are just very clear about like, that is not for me. That is not what I desire. And I still want to have, continue to have, you already have one, and continue to have a successful business that supports my lifestyle. Like, right. So I think that like, that's what I've loved about work. One of the millions of things I've loved. Genuinely though, like there's so many times that I've told you that how much you're an ideal client for me. I'm like, yes. And so I think that like, just recognizing that you know who you are and what you want so clearly that it's easier for us to work together in the sense of building that out, and you didn't buy into that. And I love being able to highlight that part of your story, because I think more business owners need to hear that it's okay to have different goals and that you can still have an amazing, successful business. So
right. Well, and that has been a challenge for me, to be honest, because when I attend business owner seminars or workshops or networking groups or whatever, and people, yes, they're always talking about scaling and adding more clients and adding more services and adding more to their team and money. Money's important, obviously. I like money. I enjoy money.
You help people raise money. Like
exactly. Money is important, but it's not the most important thing for me. And so when I would tell people at these business owners events, whatever they are, that I don't want to grow, they either, at least I get the impression that they either think that there's something wrong with me and I shouldn't be a business owner, because that's the goal of all business owners, or that I have a lack of confidence, that I don't believe in myself, that I don't believe that I have it in me to be able to grow. And that's so not true. In fact, it's like you said, I am so clear. I do have the confidence to say, no, I don't want what other business owners want. I want what I'm building for myself that's going to be the best for myself, my family, and my clients.
Yeah.
And I'm happy with that.
I love it. And I think that like that just made me have an aha, that I think that sometimes when people hear those things where it's just so disconnected from their understanding of like, I don't know, what is right in the world. I don't know how to say it better than that like people try to like coach or mentor, give advice that is unwarranted. And I realize that sometimes I'm on the receiving end of that. And I realize I wanted to ask you, does that sometimes result in, when you're in those spaces and people think that it's a lack of confidence, they try to like give you advice about bolstering that? Like
sometimes, yeah. Sometimes they're like, well, if you just believe in yourself. I'm like, I do believe in myself. And this is what I'm doing. This is because if I didn't believe in myself, then I might think that my goals and my aspirations are wrong. And then I would be working towards other business owners' goals. And that's not what I'm interested in.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's that just shows where like micro assumptions can come up. We hear a thing and we go, oh, well, if that was true for me, then it would be about confidence. And so let me help Jessi have more confidence.
Right.
Like, that's not even the problem. Leave me alone. There isn't a problem. You're trying to solve a problem that's not here. Right.
Right.
And I think I was not planning on getting into this early in the conversation, but I feel like it's where it's flowing. And so I'm going to bring up a time in our relationship where I think that I because there got a disconnect in the purpose for me guiding us through a process and what the purpose of that was versus what your goals were or what you wanted in terms of like, I know what I want. It's the same kind of thing of like, I know what size business was when we were going through the process about like lead generation and being able to like, how am I marketing? How am I lead generating? And so I'm interested if you're okay for us to go there in the conversation because it got a little sticky, right? And things did not like, that's the other thing. That's part of what I want to talk about is sometimes we get rose-colored glasses about how building a business and making changes or optimizing efficiency or whatever is going to go. And then we get into it and we go, oh, this does not feel good. And it's like a birthing process. And then when you're co-creating, that can be even harder sometimes. And we got into a co-creation place where, it just didn't feel good, right? So can we talk a little bit about that? Like, do you want to just give some context about
Yeah, and there's so much to say about that too, because it definitely was a sticky situation, and I love how we worked through it. But yeah, so it was either our second or third session working together, and I think we had 6 sessions altogether. So third session, and the first one was like let me back up a little bit. So our first session working together was like, okay, this is a lot of repeat for me. It's just kind of getting Cassandra used to what I'm doing and helping her understand the business and stuff. And I'm like, what is coming out of this? And then we came back to the second session and you had done like all this work and put together this massive spreadsheet, which I love because I'm a data nerd. And we did, and if we I don't remember what we focused on in our second session then, but I remember whatever session that was, that we were very productive and I left that one feeling great. So then
I remember it was when I think that when you had the aha, we had the aha that we could break it into the packages.
Yes.
You left feeling awesome.
Yes. So that was awesome. So I felt like we are on the right track and you gave me homework and I did my homework and you did your homework. And we came back to that third session and we started working and things are good. And then you started taking me down this path. And I just resisted. And I'm like, and kind of just kept fighting you at every turn. I felt like, and it's like, this is not what I signed up for, Cassandra. And finally, towards the end, I'm like, I was just very blunt. I'm like, I am not interested in this. You were really pushing me to what I thought you were doing was pushing me to expand my my lead generation base, and at one point you said, what about doing lives, like LinkedIn Live like this? Or what about doing, starting your own podcast? What about doing all this? And I'm like, where is she coming from? This is so not what I'm interested in. And then we focused on the network events, which is where I get, a lot of my current clients. It's, most of it's from word of mouth. And so it's people that I meet at networking events that become my client, or they introduce me to someone else. And so we started talking about how, to be more intentional about which events I'm attending and what I'm getting out of them. And if I'm not getting clients out of them, then maybe they aren't worth my time. And I just felt like, who are you to say whether these are beneficial for me? Because I don't go into these events expecting I'm going to come out with a new client every time. And it was a big disconnect. And it was me getting frustrated and then taking everything that you were saying and making assumptions about what you were trying to do. And it wasn't where I wanted to go with my business. And so finally, at the end of that conversation, I just said, look, I don't want to talk about this. This is not what is important to me. This isn't what I'm interested in. I signed up to work with you to focus on these things, and you're focusing on these things.
Yeah.
And eventually, I came to realize that no, you weren't trying to force me into those things. You weren't expecting me to start a podcast next month or anything like that.
Necessarily.
Right. You were just trying to not even push me to see what I might be comfortable with, but you needed to see what I might be interested in so that it affected the other portions of the business and how the other portions got built. And since I didn't understand that, it's very interesting for me because being an event planner, I am always working on so many different things at one time, and each of those pieces impacts everything else.
Yeah.
But when I'm good at that. I'm really good at that. But in my business and in my life too, it's like, I want to see how everything is laid out. I want to see a very clear path. And that wasn't how you approached it. You approach it very much how I approach my clients, is that, okay, we're going to work on this, and then we're going to work on this, and we're going to work on this. And eventually it's all going to tie together and it's going to be beautiful. And it did, but I didn't see that. And so it was challenging. And we had a moment where it was concerning.
Well, and thank you so much for like explaining that and painting what was going on your side. And I would say like I had a lot of lessons that I got to learn through that process too. And I want to be very clear that the takeaway is not Jessi then learned that Cassandra meant something else, and that's all there is to learn. It is that I saw how even though when I work with teams, I talk about the fact that sometimes you're speaking different languages and don't even realize it. And that was happening and I didn't notice at first.
Yeah.
And so I was like, and I also knew that we had a lot of trust and rapport already at that point. And you had verbalized numerous times of like, I trust you. And so I was like, great, come along, trust me. And then we hit a point where it was hard to trust because there wasn't enough of a clear path forward. You didn't understand the why. And I, as the person guiding that process, didn't do a good enough job helping you see that because I just didn't realize that we were speaking different languages at that point.
Yeah.
And once I realized, I was like, oh, okay, let me help. And we got past the initial little kind of like gridlock in that conversation where you had the little momentary of like, oh, okay, you're not trying to make me build all these things I don't want. But it was really when we got to have our like mid contract check-in that I have built into my agreements with my clients, that we really got to unpack it and have the ahas and the lessons on both sides that I think made the next few sessions be able to be even more productive. I was able to go, okay, these are ways that I can support not just Jessi better, but all of my clients better, because this is how we ended up here and I don't want to end up there again. And it allowed for us to course correct so that we didn't spend the next 2 or 3 sessions having this unspoken thing that was in the way of our co-creation and our trust and rapport. And so I think that like, there's so many things I want to unpack here. Part of that, part of what was going on my side of the conversation. And I'm so glad you set me up very, very lovely in a very lovely way. So thank you to say that you have a similar process with your clients. But one of the things that often happens with clients is that they have either a very narrow scope of what they want to accomplish, and they haven't thought about the ways that it's interconnected to everything else. We really do have to touch on all of these things, even though this is the core thing that you came to like me or whoever for support.
Right.
So, they want to see that clear linear path of like, let's check the things off. And not only do we check the things off, but I see the whole list before we start, right? And that's really common. And one of the things I learned from going through this with you is that I want to do, and I owe it to my clients to do a better job of helping them understand what the process to get to the end results that I will give them will look like and feel like. And that was one of my biggest ahas. I went, oh, had I realized that, because I think that one of the things you said and I said during our check-in is that conversation where we were analyzing what had happened was that you felt like we were being sporadic, like we're a little bit over here, a little bit over here, like we weren't finishing anything. You're like,
right.
To finish a thing, right?
Yep. I like my check boxes.
And spoiler alert, everyone, we still like there, I don't think, is there anything that you would say, like, I mean, there are specific tasks and like pieces that are fully done, but I don't know, like, is there anything even at this point that we're
Completed? No, nothing is fully complete. And I knew that going into it. But it's like, I wanted everything to get to a point where I felt comfortable taking it on my own and running with it. Because one of my challenges is I have trouble staring at a blank screen and putting content together. Once it's there, then I can work with it and make it better and make it fit. But coming up with it to begin with is really hard for me. And so from the beginning, I told you, I'm not looking for you to do it. I'm looking for you to hold my hand to help me create it. And that's what we did. And the goal was to leave me at a place where I could take it then and run with it. And then we might circle back for you to kind of help me finish everything up. And so in that regard, yes, I got exactly what we were looking for. But at that third session, and even at the fourth session, then it was like, I don't see how this is all tying together and how I'm going to have enough to run with. Because after the third session, especially, but even after the fourth, it's like there was nothing even close to being created. And so that was definitely very challenging for me. And again, having you hold my hand to walk me through it, I had to trust you that you knew where you were going, and I wasn't going to fall into a chasm and you were going to leave me there. You were holding my hand. And there, and I had certain expectations of what I wanted and how I wanted it done. One of the biggest pieces I wanted was for you to help me revamp my proposals, because that was something that every single time I had a new client or a prospective client, I would create a new proposal totally from scratch. And I wanted to change how I did them, because it was just very, like, my proposals, they were just not good, I think. Anyway, and so I wanted to have them focus more on benefits of what the client would get, as opposed to just the services I would provide. And so during one of our sessions, you kind of took me down this path of, well, let's talk about your why, and let's talk about your mission and your vision. And it's like, I have done all of this. I've done this through classes. I've done this through seminars and stuff. And okay, I'll get Cassandra up to speed. But then you just kept digging further and further. I'm like, why? This has nothing to, I'm not hiring you for my marketing. I'm hiring you to help me with my proposal.
Mm-hmm.
But then at a different session, it was, in order to write the proposal and have the proposals be benefit focused, you needed to know where I was coming from, what was important to me, what were my values, what are the business values, so that can come across in the proposal. And I think that was a huge eye-opening for me, where I really understood where you were taking me with your process. And so then I had the thought of, okay, it was good of me to trust Cassandra. She definitely knows what she's doing. She knows where she's going. I just have to kind of blindly follow her. But by that point, we had the check-in, and you knew that, I didn't need to be blindfolded. You had to at least tell me where we were going. And you did. And so that worked out.
Well, and I think that I'm glad. And I think that, like, even a step further that I want to connect dots in relationship to the mission, vision, values, purpose, all of that work, where you're like, I've done that. Because again, real common response I get from, especially because my ideal client are mission-driven, values-driven people. And so they're not likely going to be a good fit for me if they haven't done that work before, and or at least it's living somewhere inside of them, even if they've never documented it somewhere, which I think is actually where you were, right? Like, you're like, I've done this work. There wasn't necessarily formal documentation of it. But I say all of that to say, with all of my clients, anything that we are doing, those, for my process, we have to be really clear and have that 70% locked in before the rest of the work can really happen. Mm-hmm. And the other thing I was going to highlight about that is, not only is it about your values coming through, but because you are driven by being values aligned, mm-hmm. you had to be really clear about your values so that you could get clear on ideal client values. and speak that language, because we can't write benefit focused language if we don't know what they're valuing. Right. So, and I think that was like an aha for me, even too, that I was like, these are dots that I need to help connect for other clients to, about why we're spending so much time in what might feel like rudimentary or foundational pieces. And they're foundational because they're literally the whole thing. Like, we call them foundational sometimes because we mean starting point, but I mean foundational because it's the thing that's holding everything up.
That everything else is built on. Yeah, absolutely.
And so one of the other things I want to talk about with the check-in is just the fact that that's built in to the contract. Talk to me a little bit about that from your experience.
I loved the check-in, and honestly, it could not have come at a better time, because having come off of that sticky situation, and if I remember correctly, we had that session that was just really contentious, and then we had scheduled the check-in, but so timing happened, and so it was like, well, let's just have our next session and then we'll reschedule the check-in. And I actually said, no, let's do the check-in first before we get to, because I didn't want to go through 4 sessions and then have one check-in and then a last session or 2. So it's like, let's do it at the halfway point. But also it was because I need to clear the air. I need to make sure I understand where we're going. So it was at the perfect time. And I loved it, because it wasn't about the work that we were doing, but it was how we were approaching the work. And that's where we realized where the speaking the different languages was happening. And we were able to talk very frankly. And that was one of the things that, that drove me to work with you in the beginning, is because I felt like I could be candid with you. I felt like I could be honest. And that's very important to me. And I tend to sometimes be a little blunt in how I say things, and I don't mean to be mean, but you've got some thick skin. And so I felt like, I just felt like you weren't going to, be crushed by anything I said or take it like super personally or anything like that. And there were some hard things that I said to you, and there were some hard things you said back to me. And we had that connection, that relationship, that we were able to talk so openly. And so I just love being able to talk about the process and how things were going. And then we did change course a little bit about how to approach the next sessions and what we were going to do and how we were going to accomplish it. And, kind of drawing that path a little bit clearer for me. And that helped. I just think that's so important. And it's something that I'm planning on incorporating with my clients too, because, so often I work with the clients we talk at the beginning, okay, this is what we're going to do. Then we plan this event, then we have this awesome event. And then at the very end of our debrief, it's, oh, by the way, how was it working with me? Mm-hmm. And, by that time, sometimes they might be like, well, there's no point in complaining about anything. And not that, I hope my clients don't complain too much about working with me, but
I don't think you would be as successful as you are if that was going on.
Right, true. But I want to know if there's things that I can do differently to help my clients more, if they're expecting one thing and I'm giving them something different because we're speaking different languages. I want to make sure we're on the same page so that I can be successful for them. And my job is all about making their job easier. And so, that's something I'm planning on incorporating myself.
I love it. Yeah. I really ask for feedback sometimes to some people's perspective at nauseum, because I want there to always be this open communication. And so I'm always doing like pre-planning, pre-sessions, and like, what are we trying to accomplish, so that we know we have that to go back to. We had clear expectations, and then like incremental check-ins and having ways to do that. And then these like touch points that are scheduled. And I knew I was so glad that when we had the check-in scheduled and then whatever scheduling thing happened, and I was like, well, we can just do our next session because that's what's scheduled and we can move it. I'm glad you pushed back, because I think I was having a very human moment where I knew, even though we hadn't had that check-in yet, that you were feeling other than like happy and satisfied. And so I had a very human moment of, well, let me I don't want to delay our next session because I don't want to delay the work further for you. And I want to like get in there and like get the co-create and get the thing done. Right. And so I was so glad that you said, yeah, no, let's schedule both of those things so that we can do the check-in first.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that's valuable about having those really intentional ways of being able to take a step back from the work and talk about the work itself. How's it going? And what's the process like? Are we happy? Are we unhappy? Are we, what are we learning from this? Is not only valuable to make the process better, but I think that like when you have it built in with clients, it builds, again, that trust and rapport that it is safe and comfortable. Now you have to demonstrate that it's safe and comfortable. Otherwise people will shrink. And you never did, which I really appreciate it. And I think it's because we both have a value of radical candor. I think like that, again, I think you value being able to be direct and honest with people, and that you haven't necessarily always had spaces where that was welcome, but we had already examples before that where you had been able to see that demonstrated. But I think that like, also people are just afraid to speak up. So unless you have really specific, direct ways built in for clients to tell you how they feel, often won't speak up. And so like, that's another reason that I have my process built the way I do. But I know that like you have some amazing like processes already in place that make events go much smoother and help them be able to be more successful in the big picture of their fundraising. I know that you have some projects coming up, and I want to make sure that we can hear all of the detail, whatever details you're willing to share. So what's coming up for you that you're excited about that we should know about?
Yeah. My next event that's coming up is for an organization called the Women's Center in Waukesha, Wisconsin. They do a big luncheon event it's called their Empower Luncheon, and it's held during Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So it's a luncheon with a big silent auction. And then they've got a raffle. Also, we do a wine pull. They bring in a speaker, and, it's very inspirational. It raises a lot of money for the organization, raises a lot of awareness, has about 600 attendees, 550 to 600 attendees. So on the bigger side. And this will be my second year working with them, and I'm really excited about that.
I love it. And I know that you had shared with me previously just some of the really cool results that you were able to help them create by partnering with them last year, and some of the things that are already happening this year. Do you feel like sharing with us all? Yeah.
Sure. I don't want to take all the credit by any means, because all the work was done by them. About what I'm going to say, I did all the work planning. No, they helped some, but anyway. No, so they had been doing this event for many, many years, and obviously still coming off of COVID, things are challenging in the event world, and events are definitely changing. But I encourage them first to increase their sponsorship amounts, the dollar levels, because they hadn't done that for quite a few years. And it's like, with costs increasing, we needed to increase that. And what came out of that is that they didn't get any pushback from any of their previous sponsors saying, this is too much more or so much more. Most of their sponsors increased to the next level, which, was, or stayed at the same level, but it was an increased dollar amount, but some actually did increase levels. But they ended up having more sponsors at that higher dollar level than they had ever had before. And during the final debrief, the development director that I was working with said that a big part of that was because of me coming in and taking care of all of the details that I do. Her time was freed up so that she could develop more relationships to invite more companies and individuals to sponsor the event. So that was really awesome to hear that. That's exactly my purpose. I wanted to join my purpose with them so that I can do the logistical pieces, the things that I'm really good at, so that she can do what she's really good at, and being out there and making those relationships to be able to bring more money into the organization. And so, and last year they ended up netting almost double what they had the year before. So that's huge and it's not like they went from 10,000 to 20,000 or 20,000 to 40,000. They went from $100,000 to, like, I think $180,000 revenue. That's huge. So that was really big. And now this year, the event is on April 24th at the Baird Center in Milwaukee. For a plug, if anyone wants to attend, it's a great event. They are ahead of where they were last year in terms of number of sponsors. And we are almost, we're still 6 weeks out from the event, I think. And we've almost hit the same sponsor dollars that we did last year. And we still have a lot of commitments that we know are coming, but they just haven't come through yet. So we're going to blow last year's number out of the water, which is just really awesome for them.
Yeah.
So excited for them to be able to do more with their programs and services.
Yeah. Oh, I love it so much. And I think that one of the things that I think that I learned as you and I worked together and I got to understand your process of working with clients better is that something that I've always known to be true, and getting to see it in action in the specific ways that you work with clients, is that relationships are really sort of like at least two pieces, where there is the part that people think about. It's the communication skills, it's the communication structures, whatever. But then there's also all of the logistical pieces that support relationship. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people are either not very good at it, they're just not very skilled at it, or they are just so overwhelmed that they don't have time for all of it, right? They know what needs to get done and they literally just don't have the bandwidth. And what I think is really beautiful about how you support your clients is that you are able to do all of that background support. Mm-hmm. And it's not just about picking out a menu, though you do an amazing job at that. It's not just about being able to go help them pick out a venue and do all of the legwork and saving all the time and energy and effort and stress that comes with all of that. It's also all of those logistical pieces that are directly supporting those relationships that then in turn into all of the donors, all of the supporters, and all of the money being raised. And I think that's what when I saw that whole picture come together, I was like, oh, I love it. It's so good.
I mean, it's things like, during the event itself, I'm kind of the go-to person for all of the vendors, all of the volunteers, the caterer, the audiovisual, all of that. So if there's issues or questions or problems come up, or just making sure that things stay on track, I'm the person they go to, so that the staff of the organization and the board of directors of the organization, they're able to be networking and building those relationships sorry about that, just hit my computer. They're able to be spending their time with the attendees of the event. And they don't have to worry about that. And that was another thing that this development director at the Women's Center told me, is that she had never been able to sit and enjoy the event and talk with her attendees before, because she was always worried about running the event. And one of the things I do, is overseeing the registration. And if you attend nonprofit events, or really any event, that registration, which is the very first thing when you walk in the door, and the checkout at the end, if you're doing an auction checkout, those are two things that really stick in attendees' minds that can make or break their experience. And it's not to say that they had a really smooth check-in, and so therefore that's why they donated a lot of money. Probably not. But if they had a really poor check-in and their name wasn't there and they were getting pushback from the volunteers who were flustered, and I don't have you on my list, and I don't know how to get you that special meal that you need. And now that's going to taint their experience, and that is going to affect how much they're willing to give, because they have that in the back of their mind. If somebody is gluten-free and they get a gluten-free dinner, is that going to increase the amount that they are donating? Maybe, but probably not. But you can bet that if that gluten-free person had told me as the event planner that they were gluten-free and they were given a non-gluten-free meal, you can bet that that's going to impact their experience, and they're not going to be inclined to donate as much, because that just puts them in a different headspace. So it's a lot of those small details that, unfortunately, a lot of people think, those don't really matter. That's not the big picture thing, but they add up and they really impact the big picture. And so the more that I can do to make that all go smoothly, to make those attendees have a great experience, so that they're more inclined to donate more to the organization.
Yeah. And like that's where I got to geek out with you, where I'm like, yes, process affects relationship.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I think that like when you gave the like gluten-free example, like will people consciously like give money like or more money? And I just gave away what I was going to say, which is I don't think that they consciously think about it, but
Right.
all of these things incrementally
Right.
add up and or detract. And because it all comes down to like trust, right? Trust and likability. Like that's how we make decisions with our dollars, right? And so like if we trust that an organization is going to fulfill on whatever they've promised, then we're more likely to give them more of our money. And those little things that could go wrong, whether it's conscious or not, affect that trust and rapport.
Right.
And so like, that's why it matters. That's why getting those details right matters.
Yeah.
And I was just so excited, like just, to be able to talk about those things with you. So I think that the other thing, I had it and it slipped away.
Oh.
So it can come back. Oh, this isn't it, but while hopefully that thought comes back to me, one of the things that you mentioned is that the client that you were just talking about is in Wisconsin, where you are based. But I know that you work with organizations all over the country. And so I just want to like talk a little bit about that. I know I'll say this part too, that like we got connected because I'm based in Chicago. I had a local client here. And actually, I was not planning on sharing this, but I think it's just so relevant to the conversation, is that it was a long-term client of mine that was one of my fractional COO clients. And I was in that seat for them. And they had, we'll call it an event emergency. I don't know what, like that might be dramatic, but they did not have someone to run their event very early when I started working with them. And it was like
a year ago.
Yeah, a year ago. Yeah.
For last year's event. Yep.
Last year's event, not this year's event.
Yep.
So last year's event, and we were, I don't know, 10 weeks out or something from their event. And event planning is not my expertise, friends. Have I planned events? Yes. Have I held fundraisers? Yes. Is that my like zone of genius? No. But I also was like, we're on a timeline and we have no one to do this. I can do it. And then I did it. And it was their biggest fundraiser ever, highest attendance, highest dollar amount, but it was stressful. And talk about way back at the beginning of our conversation where we're like, yeah, we got the results, but did it feel the way we wanted it to feel? And I just knew like, I didn't want to do it again. Like, even if I could take the stress away, like that's not the thing I want to do.
Right.
And exactly all of the things that you were talking about of like, what it is like. I literally don't think I sat down once. I barely got to have any conversations. When I was in a conversation, I was thinking about the 50 things that I need to go do. Like everything that you were talking about your clients, that was my existence.
And the things that make me joyful and make me light up and I get excited thinking about all that, you were probably just like, oh my God, this is exhausting and I don't like doing this. And you were just so stressed out by it. Those are the things that excite me.
Yep, exactly. And so that was a long-term client of mine, that as I was helping them get ready for this year's, because I know we have to plan really far in advance, I was starting those conversations in summer, being like, okay, we don't want to wait until we're 10 weeks out again to figure this out. And we all know that I should probably not be in that seat again. And so let me do what I do well over here and let's not have me do the event again. And that's when I reached out to a colleague of mine who is just very well connected in the nonprofit world. And I was like, do you know anybody who specializes in a nonprofit event planning? And she's like, actually, I do. And that's how we met. And so really, honestly, we met because I was the lived experience of what you just said, even though it was my client too. Like I was in that seat of being the one in charge of planning and organizing and being at the head of this event. And so, I say all of that to say, oh my gosh, I had all that preamble. What was the question I was throwing to you? Do you remember?
I'm in Wisconsin and you're in Chicago. That was a roundabout way.
That was the wildest ride to get back to. So I know you have a client in Chicago. So obviously you work in other places.
Yes, I do.
So tell us a little bit about what is that like? Tell us about where you work now, or what excites you, and like how that's expanding for you. Because I know that is one place of expansion you are working on. So tell us more.
Yes. Yeah. So I am based just outside of Milwaukee, in Wisconsin. But yeah, I can do event planning. I can plan events that take place anywhere, because the most of the planning, especially since COVID, but even before COVID, most of it can be done virtual. You don't have to be on site for a lot of it. I have to be on site for the actual event if they want me to run it and have be successful. But the planning pieces, can all take place from anywhere. So I have a client that I did their event in Milwaukee last year. They're based out of Milwaukee, and so they had their event here. But every year they move it to a different location in the country. And so next year, or not the next year, which is this upcoming June, it's in Spokane, Washington. The year after that in 2025 is in St. Louis, Missouri. And so I'm doing all the planning for it, and I'm going there and running the event. Because I can do the planning from anywhere, as long as I have the communication, as long as I have email and Zoom capabilities. All of the coordination can be done anywhere. So I do want to expand and be able to help organizations from anywhere in the country that are needing the assistance. And so it's exciting to be able to expand my reach.
Yeah. And I think that one of the cool things that I just had, like, I know we've talked about it from a lot of different angles, but like you get to save your clients so much time, both like literal time that they like either feel like they should be doing something else, or they can't get the work done for the event because there are higher priorities or higher urgencies. And so the event planning suffers, right? But also like, because you are just so experienced and skilled at it, like you're also able to just be more efficient with it and get like you just have those talents, right? And so I was just thinking, oh my gosh, if somebody was like, especially if they're trying to do something far away or off site from where they are locally, how much time, I can't imagine what it would be like for, a development director or, an executive director, whoever in a nonprofit, having to take the days that you took to go to Spokane and go venue scouting, right? And so the fact that you are able and skilled at being able to do that for people, like, holy cow. And then one of the things, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I should say, it's a huge time savings. It's a money savings too. But in terms of the time savings, so the client that's doing their event in 2025 in St. Louis, they tapped into me to help them find a venue. And we started off with just in the Midwest. And so I think I came up with like 8 or 10 different possible cities. And then we narrowed it down to, I think, 6. And then, narrowed it down further. And then when we decided on St. Louis, then it was, okay, now we need to pick the actual venue. So this organization, it's a national organization, so they had the capacity to be able to fly me down there. Although actually, because of my negotiating and my professional skills, the organization didn't have to pay a penny other than my time, because I was able to get the local, Visit St. Louis Convention Visitors Bureau. They paid for my flight. They paid for all my food. The hotels paid for my hotel overnight stays. And I was there for 4 days. So the organization didn't have to pay a penny for that, whereas in the past they always did. And then the negotiating that I did with the final selected venue was able to save the organization a lot of money. Wow. On the flip side, the organization that you introduced me to, that's in Chicago, they also needed to find a venue. And so I did the legwork. I did the research. I narrowed it down to 3 options. I did some initial negotiating with those places, but even though it's Chicago and I'm in Milwaukee, it's not that far. It's a smaller organization. They, their funds are more limited, and it just didn't make sense for me to go there to do the actual site visit. So I gave them everything that they needed. They went met with the venues and met with the people there and decided on the venue and then passed it back to me to negotiate the contract with. And so that's a great way of doing it where, if funds are limited or time is limited, because that was the other thing is they were able to go, that afternoon, whereas I would have had to plan to drive, a day when I could take all that time to drive down there. So it worked out very well. So I meet my clients where they're at. But what I wanted to say about that one was in addition to, the research time saving is the negotiation with that venue, because a lot of people don't know that you can negotiate contracts. And that venue initially told me, okay, yes, we can have you here. It's $20,000. And anyone else maybe would have said, oh, that's out of our budget, or I guess we have to pay that much. I said, that's a bit too much. How about 12,000? And they came back and said, sure. Yeah, that works for us. So, and these are things that people who aren't event planners don't necessarily know even that you can negotiate. But if they do know you can, they don't know how to negotiate it. And having almost 20 years experience, that's where I come in. And so, plug for myself, yes, I'm saving organizations money. Yeah, you have to pay me because this is my job. But a lot of times the amount that you're saving is pretty comparable to what you're paying me. Plus add on top of that all the time that it's saving. So yay, hire an event planner.
Yes, not just any event planner.
Well, hire me.
Well, and I would say that is exactly what I was going to say, was that it's not just about the time and money, but your negotiations. I'm so glad that that's where the conversation went, because that's where I was going to drive it. And I think that it made me remember what I was going to say earlier, where I was like, well, let's go this way until I remember the other thing. When we were talking about your event that's coming up in April, and you were talking about how they were able to double or their fundraising and how things are on track to be even more this year. Yep. I was going to say, I imagine you probably also were saving them money, so they're netting even more than they were. So it's not just about doubling what's coming in, but it's about the fact that they're actually being able to hold on to more because of the ways that you're able to save money.
Right.
So, yeah. Yes. And I imagine that was probably true because it's like every client.
Yeah. I mean, things like they were in a new venue, so there was a new audiovisual partner, and they were much more expensive than the previous year, but I was able to negotiate with the audiovisual partner. And it's things, that again, people like you probably don't know. Okay, what is a lumen in a projector? And do we really need a 14.5 thousand lumen versus a 7.5 thousand lumen? Because the 7.5 thousand lumen is much less expensive and it does the job just as well for this particular place. So these types of things that, your vendors are going to give you their highest quote, because they know that you don't necessarily know the ins and outs and the language and things.
And they're in the business of making money too. Like even if they are, heart-centered, mission-driven, values-driven, like business exists to make money. And it's one of the purposes. And so, but that doesn't mean there isn't room to have those conversations.
Right. And it's not about, well, just give us a free ride. It's no, how can we work together so that, we're doing the less expensive equipment, but that's also less time for your employees to set up, and it's easier to run and all of that. And then we talked too about, okay, how can we promote you in exchange for a sponsorship? So they did give a discount, but in exchange, they got to attend the event. They got an ad in the program book. They got listed on the website, all these things. So it's because that's one of my biggest pet peeves about negotiating, is that it's not just about winning for me or for my client. And it's not even about win-win, for both sides. It's about how can both sides come out of it and feel comfortable and feel really good about it and want to continue to work together. It's not just, hey, I want this, give me this. It's, hey, I really want this, but in exchange, I'm going to give you something else, or I'm going to give you back something that benefits you. So it's a win all around.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think that's another place where we're values aligned in so many different directions, but just that creating those 360 wins that are not just about here and now, but the ripple effect of how are we supporting these organizations and everyone else that they touch, that it is like multiplying the impact, right? So I think that sometimes lost when people think about negotiate, like traditional negotiations where it's like cutthroat or zero sum, or at least like everyone's going to leave feeling fine about it, but not that like, how do we have beautiful impact through negotiation? And people are just not comfortable with negotiation. And so that's, I want to like sing your praises a bit too, of like learning, both working with you as my client and then seeing through your process of working with your clients, how you are not just saving time and saving money. You are adding this additional value to the relationships, and you have this skill because of all of your cross-industry experience and your years of experience of doing this, that you just have knowledge that these clients just possibly don't have. And or even if they do, we get decision fatigue, and they're making 50 million other decisions that don't even have to do with the event.
Well, let's be honest. The event is not the most important thing for this organization. The things that they are doing are too important to stop what they're doing to focus on negotiating menu prices and figuring out the best timing and the best flow to make everything go well. They shouldn't be focusing on that. They should be focused on the services they're providing and the clients that they're helping and those relationships with their donors, so that they can bring in more money, so that they can help more clients, so that they can further their mission. And it's that ripple effect.
Yeah. And like, I think when you were talking about how you did the initial legwork of the long distance research, did the initial negotiations, people not even realizing that could be an initial step, handing it off to the client to be able to go look at the spaces, and then them handing it back to you to finish negotiations based on the one that they selected. I think that like just the beautiful co-creation and the way, like, and I know that that's one of the things that you had shared with me in our process of working together, of the thing that lights you up are the organizations that want to integrate you and value the integration of adding you to their event team and tapping into those expertise of strategy. And like, that's why you're not just an event planner, like you are an event logistics expert, right? And so you're adding all of this value, not just with the hands-on work that you're doing, but all of the like strategy and everything you're adding to the relationship. So I just wanted to make sure you said that.
Yeah. Well, and that's true with the nonprofits, but that's true with any client in any event, is that, I firmly believe that the event is not in a bubble. For nonprofits, it's one piece of the overall fundraising strategy. For a business, it's one piece of their client acquisition or whatever it might be. And that was something that you really helped me with too, is figuring out how to vocalize the strategy and how to incorporate the strategy into my service offerings, because that's something that I value a lot, and I had trouble articulating how I do that for clients. And so you were able to help me with that.
I love it. I know, like I said, even before we went live, I feel like we could talk for hours and hours, but we don't have time to talk for hours and hours today. Maybe we'll find some time to come back and unpack some of the other beautiful things that we didn't have space for today. But I do want to circle back to something that we didn't touch on, and see if you would have just a couple of minutes to share with us about at the beginning you were talking about you wanted somebody to come alongside of you and help you get some of those pieces in place, and that you wanted to then also be able to go create. And one of the things that I was really excited about as we were wrapping up our agreement is that you shared with me that you had booked a work retreat for yourself. Can you talk to us a little bit about the work retreat?
Yeah. So I know myself pretty well, and I know that if I left our working engagement and I knew that being at home, I wasn't going to take the time to work on it, because I have clients and I have life and I've got, a husband and a dog and laundry and all those things. And I knew that if I didn't take the time to work on these pieces, that it wasn't going to get done. And then all the work that we would have been doing would have been for naught. And I definitely didn't want that. So I made kind of a spur of the moment decision to, hey, we're finished working, I think on a Wednesday, and I booked a hotel for that Saturday. And so I booked a 4-day retreat at a little, not a hotel, actually, a bed and breakfast I like going to, just to have time to myself, space to myself, where I would only work on these projects. And I had these amazing goals and aspirations that I was going to finish up everything that we worked on. And I was going to come back and it was going to be beautiful and I'd be set and ready to go. Ask me how that went.
How did that go, Jessi?
It didn't. and before we went live, we were talking about this, and you said that you wished you had known that that was my expectation, so that you could have helped manage expectations, because that was a very lofty goal. But I was able to put dedicated time and focus into it, that if I hadn't booked this retreat, I wouldn't have taken the time to do that. And so even though the pieces aren't complete yet, they're much further along, and I have, I'm at the point where I can start incorporating them little by little. It's not all at once. It's not all happening. I think at the end of our wrap up session, you had said something about, you would love to work with me for the whole year and we could continue to work on all these processes. And absolutely, there's so much that we didn't touch on that I would love to have you work with me. If time and money and, everything allowed it, that'd be fantastic. But the pieces that you did help me create, are even just the way you helped me rethink about my business and how I approach it, and the benefits that I provide has just been so impactful.
Yay, I love it. Thank you for sharing. And yeah, I think that, just to give context, I don't think we shared with anybody throughout this whole conversation, that we were looking at a broad scope in your business. And so even though some of the things that we named about the benefits proposal and some of your client delivery, we really had this scope of looking at everything from marketing and sales, what is that process for you, all the way through client delivery and optimizing that process for you, so you were able to not reinvent the wheel all the time. And then how do you optimize those relationships that are so important to you to continue on with those clients that you're working with, right? And so that's a broad scope in a business. And so recognizing that it just takes time to build out systems, build out process. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to see incremental and huge, sometimes incremental progress. It just means that it takes time.
Right.
And so, and I'm glad that you had the experience of having the aha, I'm sorry that it had to be through the experience of it, but realizing, oh yeah, this is a pretty learning process. So,
but even though I don't have things complete, they are so much more than they wouldn't even be started if I hadn't worked with you. Because again, staring at that blank screen, starting from scratch is a real challenge for me on that type of thing. And so having you to hold my hand, and getting me through that initial hurdle, because now I have it all, I just need to put it together and make sense of it. And I have the capabilities of doing that. I just need the time to do that. So.
Yeah. Well, as we wrap up, I'll leave you with one last question. Any words of advice or wisdom for anyone who might be considering working with me?
Do it. No. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, that's okay. I didn't want to cut you off. So if that's your complete answer, you don't need to share.
No, there's a little more I could say about that. But yes, definitely hire Cassandra. No, I'd say, go into it being open-minded and have that conversation up front of what your expectations are. If you're like me, talk to Cassandra about what her process is like, so you have that understanding going through. But making sure that she knows what you want to get out of it, so that you are being satisfied and fulfilled. But other than that, she's been great to work with and a lot of fun too.
Yay,
I can't tell you how many times too, I shouldn't say this, but we went over on time because it was we're supposed to end now, but we're just gabbing now and we just had fun talking. So
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. You know what's funny is I just noticed we've been talking for over an hour, and I just noticed that the conscious capitalism logo is in the top corner instead of my business. That's okay. I mean, I'm on the leadership team of our conscious capitalism, but I forgot to swap that from when I was leading interviews there.
Yeah, whoops. Cassandra Quinn.
Yeah. I mean, it's fine. But it's funny that I just noticed that
Yeah.
though. And I was going to say one of the things that I had an aha during this conversation is that when I'm not going to even say if I'm going to put this into the universe, when I organize my first TEDx event, I plan to become a TEDx organizer. I already know who my event planner is going to be, and I did not have that aha. So, well, assuming you would want to work with me, we'll have to go
for a good purpose. For a good purpose, yes.
I love it. I love it. But I was just thinking about all of the things that I desire to have that event be. And if I had a partner like you to be able to create that event with, like I would be able to focus on all of the things that I do well. And you can like, oh my gosh, our powers combined. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We're really going to wrap up now.
All right.
Thank you so much for all of your time, Jessi. This was
you.
so lovely to talk with you about this.
Yeah.
And I'm so proud and excited of all the progress that you made during our time. And I'm cheering you on. I'm excited that you're going to be in Chicago soon-ish and that we can finally maybe meet in person.
Yes. That'll be exciting. Yeah.
All right.
Well, I just thank you so much for all of your help and your encouragement and helping me think outside the box. And you pushed me in very, very good ways. And I'm so appreciative.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you everyone who tuned in or is catching the replay. Feel free again to share your thoughts, ideas, questions, and we'll keep the conversation going. Until then, bye.